You ready, Bridget?
Rich, you ready? Agenda there. Good evening, everyone. We will call the Tuesday, February 11th, 2020 Bluffton Town Council meeting to order. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you'd like to bow your heads, please do. Loving and gracious God, you are indeed the giver of all gifts, and we thank you today for all your blessings you have so graciously bestowed upon this wonderful town. We continue to seek your wisdom, guidance, courage, and strength. Be with us in our deliberations and help us to be wise in the decisions we make for the good of all of those who have placed their trust in our confidence in our leadership. We also want to pray for our next generation of future leaders who continue to make us all proud. In this we pray, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Moving on to adoption of the agenda. Mr. Orlando, any changes? If no changes, is there a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Next, we have two sets of minutes. First are the regular meeting minutes of January 14th. I will abstain since I wasn't here. If there are any changes? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
And one abstain. Next is the workshop meeting of January 21st. No changes. Is there a motion to accept?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that's unanimous. We have a public hearing tonight. We have it every year. Thank you, Michelle Knight, for being here with Low Country Council of Governments. She comes to us with a consideration of Town of Bluffton needs assessment for housing, public facilities, and economic development. And if she will start, do we have a comment for public hearing? Or yes. Okay.
Thank you for having me tonight. Just as a matter of housekeeping, we do have Officer Perez with us in the back of the room, so that if we have any Spanish language speaking people present who need translation assistance, they can be provided that.
Does anyone need translation assistance? Officer Perez, do you want to say that in Spanish for me? Thank you for being here, just in case.
And also outside, there is a clipboard with a sign-in sheet specifically for this public hearing. We'd encourage people to sign that so we'll have a record of attendance, so it's not like I'm standing in the woods and tree falling.
If you do leave after a presentation or so, if you would please do that. It helps us. It helps Low Country Council of Governments. So please do sign that clipboard if you haven't. Okay.
And then to get on to the meat of the presentation, for 2020, we have, let's go on and we'll skip through the fair housing, approximately $20 million that will be allocated for this program. Basically, we have to meet one of three national objectives. The primary one is that we have to be low to moderate income qualified for Beaufort County in Bluffton. A family of four making less than $63,500 a year would be a qualifying individual under this grant program. The $20.1 million that is allocated will be divided among three broad program categories. Those programs are community development, business development, and regional planning. I will talk mostly about community development tonight because that is what we are mostly doing down here. For community development, there is basically 4 set-asides. One is a spring set-aside, and the other 3 are fall set-asides that have different varying amounts of money allocated to them. First, we'll talk about community infrastructure. In community infrastructure, there is $11.2 million allocated. There is a mid-March application request and a mid-April application deadline. This is what we call our water, sewer, drainage, roads round. The maximum funding amount is $750,000 for a grant project under this program. There is an allowance for waivers on this, and this year they have not capped the waiver at $1 million. So if you have a large project, I'm not saying that you need to go out and ask for $3 or $4 million, but if you have something that tips over $1 million and you want to try to do it as one project, you can do it this year. We can make a request for waiver. The second set aside that we'll talk about briefly is community enrichment. There's $3 million set aside for this. This is a fall funding round set aside with an August application request and a September deadline. The types of projects we do here are basically facilities type projects. We do demolition of white elephant buildings is what we call them, or brownfield projects. We can do downtown streetscape improvements where we have a maximum there for up to $750,000 this year on that. We can do planning for regional infrastructure. We can look at library improvements, improvements to publicly owned facilities that benefit a low to moderate income group. So we couldn't, for example, not that you need it, improve town hall, but we could do things like improve a local health clinic that serves low to moderate income individuals, or if you all had a satellite office, say, of Department of Social Services down here, something like that, we could do that. We can also look at demolition of dilapidated and vacant structures that are not owned publicly, that are residential, to support crime prevention. We can look at fire substations and fire trucks. We can look at health clinic facilities and equipment, and we can look at public facility modifications to make something more accessible for the disabled. The maximum funding here, as I said, is $500,000 for everything but the streetscape type projects, and that you can ask for up to $750,000. The next thing that we'll talk about is neighborhood revitalization. Oh, wait a minute, I skipped something here. Let's talk about special projects for a minute. Special projects has a fall deadline as well with those same August and September deadlines. There's $600,000 allocated there. This is a small set aside to do projects that don't really fit in the other categories, or small projects that focus on economic development, public health and safety, or energy conservation and historic preservation, or parks, trails, and greenways. This year they've upped the maximum funding amount to $200,000 from $150,000. I will say this, they funded in the last fall round 4 parks projects, and me personally, I would like to see our region put in a parks project if we can develop something there and that. So hopefully we can do something there. The next set aside we'll talk about is neighborhood revitalization. This is like your Goethe Schultz project. There's $1 million allocated here. You must have a plan in place. There's an August request and September deadline on this as well. This is where you have a comprehensive plan of a neighborhood that's within walking distance to your town center. And you look at all the aspects of the neighborhood for the things that need to be done. You look at the infrastructure, meaning the water, sewer, road, and drainage. You look at public facilities such as sidewalks and security lighting and cameras and substations. You look at the housing stock and the things that need to be done with that. And you can look at public services too, like crime prevention programs, and use a small amount of money for that. The maximum funding amount for this is $500,000 unless you're doing infrastructure as one of your activities in that project. If you're doing infrastructure, meaning roads, water, sewer, I think in some cases drainage where you've got sidewalks involved, they will let us apply for up to $750,000 for a neighborhood now. And the reason that the state decided to do this was because they were seeing where we had neighborhood projects where there were infrastructure activities and it would eat up all the money. So they might plan to do water and sewer work and demo some houses, but by the time they got through with the cost of the water and sewer, there was no money left to demo. So they've upped that funding amount there to $750,000 for this year. All of these projects have to meet a national objective. You either benefit the low to moderate income people, majority of which, you aid in prevention of slum or blight, or you address an urgent need or health threat. Over 90% of the money that we get funded in South Carolina is documented under low to moderate income benefit. And then the remainder is primarily slum blight. The only time your urgent need comes into effect is when there's been a natural disaster declared. All these types of projects have to have at least a 10% cash match, cash or in-kind match. And basically, the more you match, the better you compete. One other set-aside that we do have to talk about under community development too is Ready to Go. This is like your BIS 5, Phase 5 project. You can do any activity in community infrastructure or community enrichment, and you have a maximum funding amount of $500,000, but waivers under special circumstances will be considered this year. Basically, once you have your project shovel-ready, meaning you have designed it, you have permitted it, you've environmentally cleared it, you have acquired all your property that you need to acquire, you make your application request, you turn your application in 30 days later, and ideally what they want is for within 60 days of a grant award, you're bidding your project, which is basically what we're doing right now with BIS 5. The other program category I'm going to talk about briefly is business development. This does not have a deadline either, but basically what you're doing here is you're providing infrastructure, meaning water, sewer, drainage, roads, publicly owned to support a business development. So if you have a company that's locating in the area, that's expanding in the area, and they have job creation commitments and investment that they've outlined to you, we can potentially pursue grant funding to help you with the public infrastructure involved in this. The remainder of the set-aside covers regional planning for us to come out and do public hearings, to hold project development meetings like the one we had last week that the town attended, for us to be able to sit down with your staff and develop new projects, and then the remainder beyond that is for state administration and technical assistance. The other thing that we need to talk about briefly is performance threshold. Right now, the town of Bluffton meets all the performance threshold requirements. You have 2 open grants. You can ask for 1 more. So you have 1 more shot until we close something. Beyond that, you can only have 1 neighborhood project. So whatever your 1 shot is this year cannot be another neighborhood project. And you can only have 1 ready-to-go project, so it couldn't be a ready-to-go project, which means you could pursue something under community infrastructure, you could pursue something under community enrichment, or you could pursue something under special projects for this year. The other thing that we're going to talk about briefly is the home consortium. Each year we also ask, beyond the town ranking their priorities for CDBG, to get in touch with us before the end of April with any of their housing concerns. Right now, all the municipalities and counties in the region participate in the home consortium. We basically have 3 objectives: that we rehabilitate substandard housing, that we increase accessibility to adequate and affordable housing, and that we support the development and availability of affordable housing. Barbara Johnson, who is our manager of that program, just likes to get feedback from all the municipalities and staff, and especially with y'all having some programs in-house here, as far as what the priorities are for your area, so that can be taken into consideration as we're looking at how we're going to be spending money for the next year. Other than that, I have no other formal comments. I'll be glad to answer any questions, and I think y'all will rank on
Right, we'll do the ranking. And do we call for public comment during this? So I'll do a public call before we go to questions. There's a public comment period for this public hearing specifically. So I'll do a first call for a public comment on this public hearing for our Town of Bluffton needs assessment for housing, public facilities, and economic development. Second call for public comment on the public hearing for the Town of Bluffton needs assessment for housing, public facilities, and economic development. Third and final call for public comment for our public hearing with the consideration of Town of Bluffton needs assessment for housing, public facilities, and economic development. Public comment is closed. Before we start questions, there are a lot of new faces in the room. These are great projects, and I know we're all thinking, oh gosh, this could go here, here, and here. Just to reiterate, this is based on low to moderate income areas, and there has to be a percentage of the low to moderate income.
Right, at least
Population.
51% of the area being served by a project has to be low to moderate income. And we quantify that in the Town of Bluffton by survey of a neighborhood.
So we do have to rank the 5 areas, and I'll look to hear any questions or comments from this side to Michelle.
Just in looking at the ranking, I think priority for affordable housing needs to move up from where it is currently.
These are 5 areas we can get funding for, and I think we're very fluid with where they ranked. I don't think there's an issue with what's 1 or 2. So is there a problem if we rank, just move affordable housing to number 1 and just move everything down? Anything else? Thank you for spending time. We will rank these for you. I'll just read it. Is there a motion for Town Council to establish the following ranking of community needs as priorities? Affordable housing for low to moderate income individuals, transportation and pedestrian safety, infrastructure improvements including sewer, water, and drainage, residential rehabilitation of housing for safe and dry housing, and then restoration of properties or facilities of special value to the community. Is there a motion of that nature? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Do you have that, Kim, on the new ranking? Any other discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And I think we've been good stewards of that money, and I appreciate all the help our staff does with that group. Next, we have presentations, celebrations, and recognitions, and it's our Students of the Month. So I will come down. We have 2 this month. First, we will call who? Allison Jones. She's a kindergartner at NC Raleigh. Yes. With whoever you want, Allison. This is your minute. So while Allison's coming up, the Student of the Month has come from the Beaufort County School District. It's about 3 or 4 years old now. And each cluster picks a child, and they work their way up to be, at this point, our cluster is about 13,000 strong. Am I right, Adrienne, about? So out of 13,000 elementary, middle, and high school, public school students, 1 rises to the top at a vote. And this young lady, the character trait this month was compassion. So, Allison, do you have someone, would you like to talk about why you got this award, or do you have someone in this lineup that will say it for you? You get the kick. You're the star. Absolutely, you go.
Allison was chosen not only by me and the other teachers that work with her, but also by the students in her classroom. For Habit Hero, she was chosen by her peers for seeking first to understand and to be understood. When she listens to others, not only does she listen to instruction, but she also listens to others sympathetically and understands their feelings, showing compassion. And she was chosen right after our sudden loss of Amir in our classroom, and she stepped forward. She was a great friend of his, but she also stepped forward to show sympathy for the other students and to listen, and she also, upon herself, made a card for his family. So she is a sweet girl, and you were talking about leaders, and she will definitely shine as a superstar as you grow up, girl. So proud of you.
So you get a certificate you can frame, and we give these coins out only to very few people. So you can start collecting these. This is a coin from the town of Bluffton, so that's for you as well. You'll understand that one day. Come on, fam. And Adrian Sutton is the principal at Michael C. Riley. Thank you for coming. Brittany is the kindergarten teacher. Proud of you. Good job, sweetie. Okay, next we have a student, a third grader from Bluffton Elementary, Sophie Wisniewski. Teachers and anybody. Looks so pretty. Sophie. How are you? Congratulations.
Doing really
Good. Sophie's a third grader, and her trait, character trait, was respect and gratitude. Are these sisters? Okay, come on up. You forgot about them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, who would like, do you want to talk about the trait, the respect and gratitude? Or do you want your principal to discuss why you got this award? You pick. All about you. Why don't you read it? You're a good reader. Okay, there you go. I want you to read it. Go into the microphone.
I would like to nominate Sophie Wisniewski for the Student of the Month character trait of gratitude. Sophie is about the most positive and appreciative student I have ever met. No matter the situation, event, or lesson, Sophie is excited, engaged, and ready to participate. Each day is like a new adventure for Sophie. While some activities at school may seem to be challenging or too boring for some students, Sophie looks at it as an opportunity to learn something new or show what she has learned. Sophie is appreciative of everyone she meets and quickly makes new friends with anyone and everyone, even if they don't have a lot in common. Sophie gets to buy lunch every Friday. Those days she is so excited to see what is on the menu. No matter what she has that day, she is grateful for a good meal, especially if it includes smiley fries, my favorite. There have been times where I have seen Sophie begin to get upset about one thing or another, but she is always quick to wipe away her tears and look for the positive in our situation. Lastly, Sophie is one of the only students I have ever known to appreciate honest feedback. If she receives a 3 developing on her pride report, she sometimes gets upset, but always lets me know what she is going to do to get better and receive a 4 meets expectations the following week. She takes this feedback and uses it to make herself a more successful student and classmate.
Wow. Yes. Miss Goodyear is her teacher. Goodyear, Miss Goodyear. So Sophie, you get a wonderful certificate you can frame, and you get a great you look forward, you get to get that one day. Okay, come in, let's get a picture. Thank you. Principal of Bluffton L is here, and y'all's parents. This is, turn it. Congratulations. Thank you. That's our first student that read her own statement, which is very nice. Okay, so next we have 2 sets of public comment. One is for just the formal agenda items, and then the second one will be quickly afterwards for non-agenda items. We do have, Mr. Hoagland, did you want to speak to the first?
I will.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, so we don't have any public comment for formal agenda items. Next is communications from mayor and council. Anything from the left side?
What grade was the young lady that read?
Third grade.
Awesome.
Third grade. Amazing.
Very impressive.
Yes, let me give her another clap. Anything on this side? Just a couple of things. I have some notes here when I got here. First, we all went to Legislative Action Day on Monday and met with our elected officials in Columbia. And they met with us several times, and we talked about a few things that were important to the towns in their district, and we think they listened. And it was just a great event to meet others in their seats. I had a chance to speak at the Haven since last council meeting, and Councilman Wood came as well. We are speaking to anyone who wants us to speak community-wise. There's just a lot of questions recently on growth and development, and I really do think the residents at the Haven got a little more information, and they felt like they were a little more educated in what was going on, and I think it was well attended. And then today I went to Southern Living. It's a tease, but it was the first time in many, many years I've been to a place and everyone said y'all. There were only Southerners there. It was the Southern Living Home Summit, and it was 350 builders that represent Southern Living Magazine all across the country, and they actually ventured into town and stopped us and told us that they had gone into town. So that's happening at Palmetto Bluff. Anything else? We have the Buck Island Simmonsville neighborhood meeting next Tuesday, February 18th from 6 to 8 at the Rotary Center at Oscar Fraser Park. And then on the 26th, the week following, is our new date for strategic plan, and that too is at the Rotary Center at Oscar Fraser Park. Next, formal items. First up is consideration of an approval for the initial master plan for the property referred to as New Riverside Village within the New Riverside Planned Unit Development for a residential office and commercial village type development consisting of approximately 35.508 acres located at the southeast corner of the intersection of New Riverside Road and South Carolina Highway 46. And before Kevin starts, my company was associated with one of the buyers or sellers of this property, so I have asked if I could recuse myself. So I'm going to hand the gavel to my Mayor Pro Tem and sit over there. So you're up. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, Council. As the Mayor stated, we are here for initial master plan request that's been submitted by AV Tech's Properties on behalf of the owner, Mr. Matei of MFH Land LLC. And this is for the initial master plan for a New Riverside Village, which is approximately 35.5 acres. Property owned by both Mr. Matei as well as the 28.3 acres and then 7.1 acres that's owned by the town of Bluffton. So from a process standpoint, you can see that we've gone through our pre-application meeting, check-in. We had our development review committee meetings in January, a planning commission recommendation, and then this evening we are here in front of you for the consideration of the master plan. If this does move forward with approval, there would be a consideration of an ordinance, both first and second readings to be determined for the land reconfiguration of the property that's owned by the town. Area map here, you can see that the property is located highlighted in blue. To the south of it is the landings at New Riverside. To the west is the property owned by the town, the 37-acre property with the barn. To the east is the South Carolina Forestry Commission property, and to the north is May River Crossing. From the growth framework map, just to let you know that this property is located, and I've highlighted, and just to make it a little bit bigger, you can see the area here is located in the village type or village place type assembly, which is this project is consistent with the growth framework map. The concept plan as well, you can see the New Riverside concept plan, which was adopted by town council in 2004. This property is approximately located right here, which is 4B, which is consistent. So the initial master plan itself, it is, and just to give you an orientation standpoint, you can see we have turned this on its side. So new orientation is, this is Highway 46 on the side here, New Riverside Road down below here. The property, it has, it is a mixed-use development which consists of retail, residential, commercial uses, both single-family as well as multifamily. You can see from a design concept that the buildings are placed closer to the street with the orientation. We have we have the connected streets throughout the site. So that way there's multiple locations for entering the site, both on New Riverside Road, Highway 46, as well as at the rear here, this is a connection into the landings at New Riverside, which is a gated community, so that access would be allowed for individuals that live in that community. From a phasing standpoint, phase one consists of property that is, and I'll get into more detail here in a second, property that is owned by the town, which would include the town park, a proposed library being located here, single-family residential component towards the rear, the commercial village, which would contain the majority of the retail uses and restaurants here, potential daycare facility located here, and then 3 out parcels that front on Highway 46, including fast food and potential convenience gas store at that location. Phase 2 is the multifamily component, which is located on this quadrant here. From an assignment of rights aspect, the applicant does hold 25 acres of commercial development and 207 residential dwelling units. They do have the ability to convert their commercial acreage of 107, I apologize, 107 residential dwelling units, and can convert an additional up to 29 residential units if they so choose for 136 units. It should also be noted that in the future, any development of the site would require the assignment of rights for development. So phase 2, if there's no assignment at that point, they would have to acquire additional units before it would be able to be developed. From a land use standpoint, this is, again, the mixed-use development, which has the mixture of residential, commercial, civic uses, and this is consistent with Section 2B1 of the concept plan, which allows these uses as shown on the slide. April 22nd, Planning Commission held a meeting to review this and make a recommendation. They provided a recommendation to approve with the following conditions, and I will read through them. Yes, sir. January 22nd. Yes, sir. Did I say something different? Okay. January 22nd, which, so they went through and they included the following conditions, which was the master plan must incorporate innovative stormwater designs such as, but not limited to, using recirculation of water for irrigation, the use of pervious paving and or porous materials for lanes, alleys, and parking where appropriate to provide a low-impact design alternative to the traditional hard and non-porous surfaces. Indicate setbacks against all the external properties, and I'll explain more detail of that in just a moment. Update the stub-out plan to the SC Forestry Commission property and to indicate the unimproved right-of-way extending to the property line. And then in the narrative to update Section 4J under streetscape, which was to include that sidewalks were required on both sides of the streets in the residential component. And then to include an extension of the path around the town park space to create a full loop by showing and traversing through the water's edge where the restaurant on the waterfront is located. And I'll go into detail here in a second on that. So some of the existing conditions on the site, it is situated on a predominantly sandy site has elevations of approximately 41 feet in the northwest quadrant to 31 feet towards the what would be the rear of the property, connecting into the landings at this location. There are no wetlands and no floodplains located on this site. And then the tree cover is a mix of hardwoods and pines, which include the live oaks, laurel oaks, gum, and pine trees. You can see in the table provided that approximately 75% of the trees located on the site are laurel oaks and pine trees. From a site design standpoint, there are numerous design elements that were included in this, which includes on-street parking, street trees throughout the site, the buildings that are addressing the street, providing the centrally located park here, a trail system connecting to the adjacent property owners, and you can see that there's a trail system through the buffer that connects into, this is the landings back here, and then as well as over here. The grid type layout, again, where the streets are located, cross through the site here, and then down through here. The Civic Building, which is the focal point for the water feature, and then preserving the largest significant trees on the site, which are located here in this entry park. From a connectivity standpoint, again, we have connections for vehicular purpose. This is a full access movement here on New Riverside Road, which allows for a right in, right out, left over, left out. You have a right in, right out only located here for vehicular access. Because of its proximity to the roundabout, it's impossible for them to get any type of other movements. You have other vehicular connection here on Highway 46, which is what we call a three-quarter movement, where they're allowed to turn a right in and a right out and then a left over. So if you are traveling from Bluffton towards the roundabout, from Old Town towards the roundabout, you'd be able to turn left into the site. However, you'd not be able to turn left out of the site heading to the roundabout. We also have future connection here with potentially for the South Carolina Forestry property, and then a vehicular connection into the landings. And as you remember, when the landings master plan was approved, we made sure that they provided both that vehicular connection as well as a pedestrian connection located up here. So this will have a connection, so individuals that live in the landings will actually be able to walk to the end of their street and then walk straight into the site here. There are numerous trails and paths as well. We have a half-mile park trail. That's the trail that's in blue that goes around the water feature here. And you'll note that one of the conditions from Planning Commission was that there was a connection to connect the entire loop, as we'll call it, and that was this blue line right here. That has since been added to meet that condition. We do have a trail located through the buffer. You can see the purple. It's approximately half-mile trail located here, will then ultimately connect in with the landings here. And then it's kind of difficult to read on here, but it's an approximate 8-foot wide path that would be located through the buffer. Some of the streetscape elements that we have in place, the applicant worked with staff to incorporate certain streetscape designs. So they looked at Dr. Mellenchamp, obviously just a town project that was recently constructed, and felt that they wanted to include those design elements into their plan. So what they've done is, and what we've provided is, you can see that they are planning on having a two travel lanes with angled parking on either side, which very similar to what you see on Dr. Mellenchamp right now. And then also potentially have the 2 travel lanes, angled parking, and parallel parking. Again, an example on Dr. Mellenchamp there. For park space, as I stated, this is the existing town property. This property was donated to the town during the purchase of the 37-acre park where the barn is currently located. So this was part of that purchase, but was actually donated to the town. When the applicant came into us, they said, "Listen, what can we do to help with this piece of land in order to make it, more advantageous to everyone. So the idea was coming up with providing a space that was then incorporated into the entire development versus having a parcel, an irregular shaped parcel of land on a very busy highway and trying to provide some type of a park function at that location. So by changing it around a little bit, you're moving the elements more towards the interior of the site, so that way there's less out on the main road. During that reconfiguration, again, we do have a 60-foot highway buffer, that's undisturbed buffer. So that land now, which was part of the town's property, which is approximately 3/4 of an acre, while will still be a buffer, is no longer part of the town's property, but would actually be the applicant's property. So we're still incorporating more of the town's design into the interior of the site. With that, as stated earlier, is the half-mile trail, which would go as an easement through that buffer area, ultimately connecting the landings on one side around the site, and then providing a connection into the town's property across New Riverside Road. Again, this is just to show from a table of existing property at the 7.1 acres to what is now proposed park at 5.1, and then having the area of the trail in that 4 acres worth of buffer. The trail itself would be a public easement. It would be an 8-foot trail with potentially a 10-foot easement to have a foot on either side, if not more, which is approximately 26,000 square feet of area. From an open space standpoint, you can see that the plan has the town's park here, which is incorporated into the water feature, as well as improvements all along the sides. You have 4 pocket parks, one located here with a lot of them large maturing live oaks. Another, and that's in essence would be a privately owned park. You have a privately owned pocket park in front of some of the commercial development, a privately owned park for the residents of this multifamily, and then another park that would be specifically used for the residents that are located in the single family here. From a code requirement, the code requires a minimum of 15% of the site. So this project far exceeds. You can see that we have approximately 10.5 acres of just buffer and open space as shown. This does not include any of the additional landscaping islands throughout both the commercial and the residential areas. So it's in excess of 40% of the site would be used as open space. From a tree preservation standpoint, you can see the areas highlighted in purple. These are all the areas within the buffers of 46 New Riverside, as well as the PUD buffer along the South Carolina Commission of Forestry. That entire area would be a preserved area. So the trees minus providing the connections for pedestrian and vehicular access would be preserved. Just highlighting some of these trees, there's approximately 409 trees in this purple area, including some of the live oaks. Just kind of highlighted some of these significant trees that are located in the area. And then there are additional trees throughout the site that were determined that can be saved during the development plan process as well, that are significant trees. From a tree replanting standpoint, there's approximately 4,300 linear feet of street, and if you have a street tree at approximately 50 feet on center, that results to 172 street trees that would be replanted on this site. Typically, those would be a live oak tree. And then also, if you remember, one of the conditions of the Planning Commission was dealing with a setback requirement. You can see that along the rear of the site here with the landings, there is an existing self-imposed 50-foot vegetative buffer for the landings. There will be an additional, you can see a 20-foot setback, and of that, 10 feet would be a buffer. So the property that's located, or the portion of the property here, you would have approximately 60 feet of undisturbed area plus the 10-foot setback in between this development and then the homes that would be located on the opposite side in the landings. So from a tree removal standpoint, there's approximately 2,531 trees that are being removed on the site. You kind of highlighted that in the yellow area here. So from a code requirement in the ZDSO, that post-development is required to have the 15 trees per site. So kind of put this table together, you can see that the existing trees, there's 2,965. 434 of those trees are being saved. The 2531 are being removed. They're replacing an additional 472 trees. That's 172 of the trees, of the street trees. Staff did a calculation. It was an additional 300 trees throughout the landscaped islands and areas on the site. Those are all large maturing trees. For a total of the 472 plus any additional decorative trees that would be planted. And then from a code requirement, that the total number of trees required post-development is 533, which that's the 15 trees per acre, versus what is being provided, which is 906 trees post-development. So they are meeting the requirements of that tree coverage, the minimum tree coverage, which is the 15 trees, by providing 25 trees per acre. From a stormwater standpoint, it will meet or exceed the 25-year, 24-hour storm requirements that are in place. Now, I wanted to do in my amazing photoshopping skills that I have here to show that here is the plan that we have in place, and I'm going to back up one just so you can see that the pattern of the flow is the majority of the water is going to go into the ponds that are located here. And then it goes to an outfall, which is located right here, which on this map it's kind of difficult to understand what it's doing, as well as here. So when you put it in perspective, you can see that water is filtering through not only the pond that is located on site, then you go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 additional lagoons before ultimately it then discharges into the wetlands. Development standards. So the site will be developed in accordance with the concept.
Go back to those lagoons for a minute.
Sure thing. So again, you can see how, so the blue here,
Right.
is going to connect into here, which connects into this pond. And then the pond over here, it comes over and connects into this lagoon, which goes into here, into here, into here, and then into here, and then ultimately discharges.
Kevin, could I ask one question? Verify that. What, if I'm seeing what you're saying properly, phase 2, which we haven't even, phase 2 won't be built until phase 1 is completed, the way I'm seeing it. So
When it's completed,
when it's
completed,
all completed.
yes, yes. Again, from that phase 1 standpoint, all of phase 1 would discharge into this point right here, which when you change the orientation is over on this side right here.
Here?
Right here. So here's the pond.
Yep.
Okay. Water comes to this point, discharges, and then it ultimately goes into this lagoon system, which is part of the landings. So then the water travels from here, and then it'll go into the additional ponds, the lagoons here, 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 and then ultimately it discharges at this point here into the wetlands.
It actually leaves property and goes into the land.
I'm sorry?
It actually leaves the property and comes back in?
Well, I'm sorry, yeah,
The
so it
lagoon over
leaves,
here that you said it was,
yeah, so it leaves New Riverside and then travels through the lagoon system of the landings, and then this is the ultimate discharge location here. And that's New Riverside, this is New Riverside Road, and then you can see that there's existing pipes located under New Riverside Road, which then ultimately discharges into the wetlands. Okay. So from the development will be in accordance of the concept plan in New Riverside. It'll meet the open space requirements, exceed the minimum tree coverage, will meet or exceed the development standards. Again, this is located in the Highway Corridor Overlay District. So this will have an additional review by the Planning Commission based off of architecture, landscape, and lighting. As well as you know, the development plan will be reviewed by Planning Commission as well. So this project will go in front of Planning Commission 2 separate times. From access standpoint, we have the 2 access points on New Riverside Road, 1 access on Highway 46, an access into the landings at New Riverside, and then a potential access for in the future to the property that's adjacent to which is owned by South Carolina Forestry Commission. There was a traffic impact analysis that was performed previously, which assumed that there would be 150,000 square feet of general commercial and 350,000 shopping center, which was substantially more than what this plan is proposing, which is only 103 square feet. At time of development plan review, we'll do a traffic assessment, and what that is to determine length of tapers or turning lanes that are required. That assessment will say, working with the DOT to make sure that they are providing sufficient length for any turns, right turns or left turns into the site. Stormwater management plan, again, is it will meet the pre-development levels of the 25-year, 24-hour storm that we have required, and that it'll incorporate the permeable pavement, filter strips, bioretention areas, and then the reuse of irrigation water for stormwater. The utilities will be located on site. Yes, sir?
Yeah, back to the traffic analysis.
Yes, sir.
The last one was in 2004.
Correct.
Okay, and so a lot has changed, and I think 170's got an E rating of service. That being said, you made the comment that they will go back and have an analysis made before the...
We'll do an assessment, which is in essence, it's more of a lower level review of the site itself and how they can get the necessary improvements through DOT to make sure that they're providing, the appropriate length of turn lane. If DOT is requiring that they provide a 200-foot turn lane, then that's going to be established during that assessment. Or if they require a 150-foot turn lane, that'll be determined at that point.
So they would not get approval till that process is completed?
Yes, sir, during the development plan process.
So we've come to the conclusion we don't need a whole new traffic analysis at this point based on where we are in the real world today?
Yes, sir, because again, that initial assessment, the initial assessment for the improvements throughout the area they did the assumption that there was going to be, whatever, almost 500,000 square feet of the general commercial shopping center, and this site is actually only 103 square feet. So they made their assumptions based off of a 500,000 square foot project, and this is only a 100,000 square foot project. So improvements that were previously made to the site and the roundabout, the 46-170, all those were taken into account, the amount of square footage based at that 500,000, and this is backed off to that 103,000.
So the 2004 analysis would have included all the other proposed development around there based on RDU numbers and
Yes,
commercial?
sir. So the assumptions were based off of the maximum number of residential dwelling units, the maximum number of acreage, or excuse me, of square footage for commercial uses. So they based it on what is the what is the largest amount of residential units and commercial that we're going to have on this site to make the necessary design of the roads.
Kevin, I want to follow up on that question to make sure that's it the way that I thought I heard it. There's a traffic analysis for number of trips that was done in 2004.
Based off of, what they do is an assumption. They assume at 500,000 square feet of retail commercial use, when they put it through their model, they put that square footage in there, and it determines the needs for the roads. Now, what we're referring to is for this site specifically, what type of turn lanes are going to be required. When you require a turn lane, sometimes you might have to have, 2 turn lanes if you have a huge development versus having a single turn lane versus the stacking that you need. Sometimes you only need to be able to stack, 10 cars for vehicles to be able to turn left into the site, or they might have to be able to stack for 15 cars. That's what that assessment will determine, and then SCDOT will say, all right, you have to now make sure that you are designing your improvements to meet those requirements.
Just to simplify that a little, Kevin gave a great level of detail with all of that, but the answer is yes. That traffic impact analysis that was done in 2004 was based on that concept plan and everything that was approved as part of the new Riverside development agreement. Then the specifics, once they get into the layout and all of that, when they actually submit the development plan for approval or consideration rather, that's when the assessment is done to get all of those details in place and how it's going to be done. But the real quick 3-letter answer to your question is yes. Yes, it was.
But we have a 16-year-old assessment analysis that we're going by. And I guess another question I have would be, I'm assuming it's a question, that 46 would have been a part of that analysis also?
Yes,
Because
sir.
interesting enough, the level of service for 46 does not show up on the maps in reality the way it is. I'm assuming because it's a scenic highway, but that is like, everybody knows, that's almost like bumper to bumper.
Yes, all of that was certainly taken into consideration as far as that assessment, or analysis.
I'm a little troubled personally that we're using a 16-year-old piece of information to try to come up with what we need to do from a road traffic impact perspective.
Yeah, that's always been a concern of mine also, and it's just kind of strange in a way if you look at when they did the assessment for the schools and how big the schools all of this, approved happened there. I mean, studies are it's law, we can't change it, but probably always going to be an issue.
Yeah, let me say for all of us too, I think that anybody who's been paying attention knows that we're in a new day with growth and water quality questions that we get hit constantly about, and people have been coming down here en masse. And so it's nothing about the project itself. I think it's a gorgeous looking development on paper, but again, that's the reason for all of these concerns is looking out ahead. I would love to hear more about the stormwater because I don't understand it. And what I mean by that is, and I don't even understand, I saw in the staff report, the New Riverside River is an impaired river, right? Excuse me, New River is impaired, and it's one of those, that 303D, the Federal Clean Water Act. I can't begin to even speculate where that river would be impaired. The bigger question for me is the way this stormwater system is set up and the way I think I was hearing it. Is Is this neutral based? In other words, everything will be captured at the site and nothing's really leaving except for the runoff that, outflow?
If I may, I'll have the engineer on record come up and explain that in better detail. He's the engineer that designs this, and can better provide a better explanation for it. That's Mike Hughes with Thomas and Hutton.
And the other thing too, the soil, it talks in the report about the soil being sandy in some locations. So I don't know how all this ties together. I guess the biggest concern is, is it neutral, basically, capturing the stormwater runoff?
Yes, so my name is Mike Hughes with Thomas and Hutton. I've worked on projects in Bluffton now for 18 years. A lot in Palmetto Bluff, New Riverside, and some of the surrounding neighborhoods. New Riverside, you had the question about it being an impaired waterway. It is a 303D water quality impaired waterway for fecal coliform. The New River actually has a watershed that extends way up past Sun City, all the way up into Jasper County. It's a very large watershed, and yes, it is impaired for fecal coliform. So one of the requirements in the development is to make sure we are not contributing to the degradation of the river. And so we are having a great series of treatments as we pass through to make sure we are treating for fecal coliform and pathogens. Fecal coliform is an indicator for pathogens. So we will not be exceeding, we are not infiltrating 100% of the water. We will be infiltrating water quality amounts. So the 1.95-inch rain event will be infiltrated through the sandy soils we have. We're going to be implementing pervious pavers. We will be using stormwater reuse through irrigation to apply the water onto the site to make sure we are capturing and trying to promote infiltration back into the soils. But one of the greatest parts of this is when we set up the agreement, actually Palmetto Bluff, New Riverside set up the agreement, they were required to stub out to this property specifically to serve the property so that we could pass our stormwater not only through what we do on site, but also through their BMP treatments to further treat what we're doing from our site. So this was a very thoughtful decision on their part to make sure this site was taken care of in terms of water quality treatment. So, as it relates to the traffic study, we did do the traffic study in 2004, and that was a needs assessment which determined the roundabout size, shape. It also determined the size of New Riverside Road, the number of lanes. Palmetto Bluff did a $14 million investment through the construction of New Riverside Road and the roundabout to make sure we were abating traffic concerns at the old intersection that was kind of at an angle, if you remember, 170 tied in at 46 over towards, I guess it would be the west of what the current intersection configuration is. There was a study done after us by the school, by Beal Engineering for the high school that also did an assessment to make sure the use for the high school and the other school systems intended would be able to be handled by the traffic circle, and the assessment came out positive. So there have been other traffic studies done, full traffic studies. The one we reference is the one that was originally done for the intention of serving the 4,800 DUs in New Riverside, Palmetto Bluff, and then also the anticipated growth we saw from the PUD development of the Jones Estate PUD and then natural growth through the town of Bluffton. So that's the study we reference specifically because it relates to the roundabout and the original design intent of the roundabout to serve the area and improve the intersection. Yes?
Go back to the last lagoon that will discharge from. All the other lagoons, the other 4 is 5 total. The other 4 has water filters or some type of filtration. Get to the final one, how is that filtered?
So as it relates to the outfall, that one has, and I think before it actually makes it to the New River, it does pass through the wetland system that's on the opposite side of New Riverside Road. But I believe that final lagoon within the Landings Inc. New Riverside, which is the adjacent community, just does bubble out into what is an existing ditch that passes through some culverts under the roadway and into a spread out kind of level spreader area for the wetland system to collect it.
How many acres is that filtration system? You're saying it comes out into, I guess, like a wetland area or something somewhere? Or?
Correct, yes.
How many acres is that?
Total to the wetland? I'm trying to think about our site. We've got 20, we have 27 plus 7, so 34 plus, I think the Landings in Riverside. might be 130 acres, but I also think there are areas at Midway Farms that also drain through that natural waterway. So it's not just limited to our site. The watershed does break along a ridge near the property or near the South Carolina Forestry property, but it does receive more water that doesn't even include some of the town property, but some of the county property, or county government
Let
property.
me ask another question on the traffic situation.
Sure.
And again, like the last guy in, I kind of get where that puts people. The other traffic studies were looked at. Does this lead to a case where the road goes from E to an F, or do you know that?
The traffic that we're going to see is fairly minimal relative to the overall scale of the development in the town of Bluffton and the intersection. I can't say for certain, but I'm pretty sure the contributing loads that we would have would not turn into a failing condition. But that will be part of when we go through the process of doing an assessment. We'll do the traffic assessment. So to assign how much loading we're going to be contributing to that.
Questions, but I want to wait to somebody else.
I have more too, but do you want to?
Question for Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Oh, you do.
That's what I do.
Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
So in regards to while we're on the topic of the stormwater, so I remember from the last meeting, I asked a question about if there were any data collected to show how effective our current ordinances or requirements with trees and buffers were, like if they're working or if we needed to revisit them to see if they needed to be increased or reduced. Did we have was there any more discussion or any more information collected on that?
No, ma'am, I don't believe so. Are you referring to the stormwater manual?
No, in regards to like in seeing where we are and like how the conditions of, as we're going in and seeing the development and trees are being cleared and other things like that, with the requirements we have now as to how many trees need to go back into or be replanted back into those developments. With the current requirements we have, like, have they been proven to be effective, and like how effective is it in the sense of, is it a minimal, is it minimally effective, is it increasingly effective, to know like do we need to raise those standards? Because in looking at the numbers here and saying that we're going to see a reduction or loss of almost 3,000 trees and a replanting of 30% of that, I'm trying to say, like, is that going to, even though they're meeting those minimum requirements that we've set, is that something that we need to revisit?
If you're referring to updating our code requirements.
Right.
I mean, since the last meeting, we haven't done anything, no, ma'am.
I will say, excuse me, that we're continuing to review all the rules and regulations. We have not brought forward any of that to you as a council to review. So right now, what we're referencing in the review is what that ZDSO 90-3 requirements are. And then further in the packet, and as Kevin outlined in his presentation, they are exceeding those standards, and we will continue to review that once it gets through the development plan review process, as well as the highway corridor overlay review process for the landscaping, lighting, and trees, to do everything we can to make sure that those are exceeded, and the trees that are in the condition to save are saved, and continue through the process. But as far as formal regulations that have been brought forward to you at this point, we are still working on drafting those and how those would or could apply to townwide.
Thank you. I would just like to say, I think that would be important to look at or have collected, only because the filtration systems and the lagoon and everything here it's beautiful, but we have to know or give consideration that going from those 3,000 trees down to the 30%, knowing that those trees do act as a natural filtration, that is indeed like a heavy impact. So I would like to see where we are on that in terms of if we need to revisit our current ordinances.
Sure, and also that was one of the concerns of the Planning Commission, and that's when we talked about providing those pervious materials as well as the irrigation reuse. to making sure that that water, as it's running off, first off, we're collecting any of the pollutants that are in it. That goes into the pond, it settles, and then the water can then be reused for irrigation, which then again, it gets filtered through. So from a stormwater standpoint, a lot of that water is just being recirculated back up onto the site, and then so that way it can filter in through the ground. But I've made that as, one of the concerns here, and we'll definitely look into that.
I guess, stop you in the middle of the presentation, but I guess we need to address some of these things as we go.
Yes, sir.
If we could back up a little bit, I have one question for you. When we're looking at the actual property that belongs to the town, if I'm seeing what I think I'm seeing, I'm questioning the amount of lagoon. The blue is all water, if I'm looking at it right, correct?
Yes, sir. I'm going to get to a clear plan here.
What I'm curious, and I don't know if you have these numbers or not, how much of our original 7 acres or whatever we had, how much of the finished product is actually going to be land, usable park land, in relation to water? Everybody wants waterfront property. I do too. But what I'm saying is if we had 7 acres and now we're going to have 5 acres of water, so the town, what's going to be town park and maintained by the town? How much dirt is that?
So
actual land, not including the lagoons.
Absolutely, I understand. So town property, 7 acres, and then now town property, 5.5 acres. 5.5 acres, there we go. And of that, 2.5 is the actual active recreational area. So whenever you look underneath here, you can see the playgrounds, the open space, the areas that people can, sit under shade trees. You have that, but then you also have to take into account that public easement that I was referring to for the trails. So we have the trails that are running through the buffers. So that's area that is used for public use. So anyone be able to use that site versus it being a private site.
Meaning the orange?
Yes, sir. Yep. So that area there as well. So, that's, as I was stating, it was an 8-foot pathway through the buffer area that can be used for public use. So it's merging the public-private realm into each other. The other thing, as stated in the staff report, and I don't know if I was, clear, is that, the applicant is the one that will actually be developing this site. So they will be using, their money to make this a more formal site versus what the town has of the 7 acres. So, from to do a trade-off of acreage per acreage, it's difficult to actually say that. Like, while we might be losing that 1.6 acre difference, what we're picking up is the fact that someone is paying for this area to be an improved park. The park would then be owned and maintained by the town, and the stormwater system, the pond, the water feature, will actually be maintained by the applicant because that is their stormwater system. So they'll be maintaining that portion of it, whereas we are just maintaining the formal portion of it. So
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
You understand?
I mean, I'm not knocking the project. I'm just trying to make sure what I see and what I think I'm seeing is what.
Yes, sir.
So basically, we started with 7 acres, and then we end up with 2.5.
2.5 of
park.
Yes. Not including.
The developer is going to build the park, so to speak, but we will maintain the park.
Yes.
After it's completed.
Including the half-mile trail through the buffer, as well as the half-mile loop around the park.
So the town will maintain that too?
Well, no, sir. The town is only maintaining the formal park portion.
2.5 acres.
Yes, sir.
Around the lagoons. The building there, the what is that building, the kind of a
Sure, let me get to a, I'm sorry, let me get to a clear
Called it a civic building.
plan here.
the civic building?
Sure, the civic building here, and this is the owner, Mr.
Yeah,
Matei, so I might let him speak on behalf of that.
What is the civic building going to be?
We are in talks for over the last several months with there. They've eliminated all their other sites. This is the site they've chosen. They're waiting on site plan approval to give us formal approval on that. It'll be about a 2-acre site. It will be the most significant library pretty much in the state of South Carolina. They estimate it'll be about 14,000 trips there a month. It's going to be a different kind of library. It'll be a reading library, but it'll also be a place, a gathering place for computers where people can fill out computers, for employment applications, and all other services within the library. The way we tried to focus the park was that we'll be building the park. It will be part of the town. We're building all the infrastructure around it, fishing pier, some other things for the pond will not be just a stormwater pond. It'll be an aerated pond that we will maintain. We'll have it stocked with fish, and it'll be really a gathering place, we hope, in the community. When we first started this, I've done a lot of these, and I live in Palmetto Bluff. My wife and I are going to own this. This is real important to us. As we came to the town several months ago and said, this is our concept, please make it better. And we spent weeks with y'all making it better. A lot of this was an evolution into how do we take a park that's up on a really busy highway, that a third of it's buffer, and how do we turn it into a community space that we would really recognize as a public space within this live, walk, play community. And that's where it all came from, was a collaborative effort of thoughts of how do we make this work? If this was your canvas, what would it look like? Because we wanted to really make this the new standard. This would be a new bar in the community of how you do this, because this is so important to us, because this is the interest of where we live, and this is the interest of the town. So we tried to make it, but we're always open for more suggestions, but that was the whole purpose of the park, was to really make it a gathering space to where when y'all had events across the street, the connectivity with the golf cart paths, working with the fire station to get the alignments right where it would be a safe crossing there. We feel it's going to be a two-part thing. People will be enjoying y'all's venue, coming over here to local restaurants and facilities that it'll just be a continuation of what y'all are trying to do.
Well, that's one of the reasons that I'm asked, that all sounds great, and I'm very impressed with that. But I've never seen a public library inside a private development.
Well, they will own it.
You know, I mean, that's just something that we, since I've been up here, I don't see, you know, normally, I mean, not say you never see it. We got one here in Bluffton Village. But, you know, like these types of developments are normally residential with commercial on the front. And
We thought the library,
Yeah,
if we're
so to
able to bring it to fruition, it would be part of kind of a pastoral setting around the original old big oak trees that are there. And they chose this site over many other they have. They will own it. It will belong to them. We possibly will build it for them, but it will be owned by the county. Thought it was just a great addition, rather than a food store, you know, it's more of a community thing.
the, just while I'm still trying to read my scratch
I
here.
didn't mean to bump into
No,
it.
sir,
It was,
you're fine.
it was referred about, by the planning commission about the restaurant, the waterfront restaurant.
Well, right out here on
Recommendation.
the point, we were hoping, we've had some interest in that ours with some local restaurants. That would be a great location for a restaurant overlooking the lagoon. It would be treated as a lagoon. Like I said, it would be aerated, it would be maintained.
Councilman Toomer, I think the planning commission, the previous plan that they received, this pathway that I have the arrow pointing to was not on the plan. So that was one of the conditions that they asked. The applicant was able to update the plan to show that that path now closes the loop around the lagoons by providing a pathway, you know, located right adjacent to the water.
We really visualize people coming to the park and having lunch out on the lawn, bringing their kids and enjoying a day there. It's unique, but I think it's
Oh, it's very, it's much different than any I've seen. So that's why I was
what we were hoping for.
That's why I'm just asking all these questions, because people ask me and I got to give them an answer.
All right.
I agree, and
When-
the urban
when-
setting's gorgeous, you know. from that-
The number of trees and the tree topo that were going to be saved and come down, are the saved including the buffers?
Yes, sir.
Saved already.
90% of what's going to be saved is in the buffer. I see 8 trees that were not in the buffer.
You get
8
to-
significant trees that were going to be, what color were they? Were they red? Let's see.
Yes, so on the plan, we're referring to those live oaks in what was the private park. So there's a 22, 20, 24, or 40, 42. There's significant live oaks in this area that we're able to save. And then for purposes of the grading, in order to get the lagoon system in place, obviously there has to be some cut, which can't then save trees in that area. There were trees that we had highlighted throughout the site, further over towards the side, that, upon looking at them, on a site visit, determined, we all went out on the site, we were able to determine, like, these are additional trees that were discovered as being trees that can easily be saved during the development plan process.
Let me ask a question to follow up on those trees, and this is having more and more questions, and Bridget brought up the idea a minute ago about, we're going to review, I know we're reviewing everything. I mean, we have to. The way it's done in developments and has been in perpetuity, especially on the highway corridor areas and stuff like that, there are buffers, right? There's buffers.
Yes, sir.
And the trees are in those buffers.
Yes, sir.
But yet, when we take a development like this one, we incorporate the trees that have to be saved to begin with into the overall development. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Seems to me that we need to revise how we do that when we have a chance to look at it. They're already saved, but yet it gives the developments a break because they get to incorporate those numbers into their overall scheme, when in reality, they're really removing more trees. I think we were going to save 13.7%, but in reality, a lot of these trees are already exempt. And so the number actually drops. And, I mean, we've all been reading more. What is it? 1,361 gallons of water runs off 1 acre of a wooded area in a 1-inch rainstorm. Wooded area is 5% runoff. Parking lot is 25,800 gallons on the 1 acre. It's a 95% runoff. Now, what we've done here that I've been hearing tonight is far more pervious applications, and that was another thing on the pathways and on the areas on the peripheral edge. Were those going to be concrete, or is those natural, or what were they?
They're asphalt.
Okay.
So,
Should we not, and this came up last meeting we had, should we not make the standard, and I don't know from a functional perspective, this is something staff would have to tell us. Seems to me we should be going pervious just about everywhere on everything we can, period. Now, if it's not functional for whatever reason, there's a safety issue or something involved with it, we need to be told that by staff. But I think if we make that our standard, that's what we need to be looking at going forward. And I did have another thought, two more, Larry or Fred, if you'll bear with me. So I think we should revisit the tree issue to see if there's any potential way to save a few more. The other thing about this lagoon system here in the drawing, where the town property is to one side and the development properties to the other, if the town property, the water section there, lagoon, that was left as trees, then the only thing left, and I'm not opposed to the water venue that's proposed there, would there be or do not be enough retention pond area for them to do what they need to do without the town property, using that as part of the filtration system?
let me get to a slide that shows here. So are you referring to this area here?
Yes,
Highlighted?
in other words, the two collectively together work as their stormwater runoff system, right?
Correct.
So if the town piece right there was not a piece of this discussion for their overall development, would there be enough space there to do what they need to do from a retention perspective?
No, they would, I mean, the site would then be reconfigured to make sure that they met whatever requirements that we
Okay.
have in place.
So my point being is, one hand's working with the other hand. They can't do it without the town property as it's designed right now. So that being said, my final comment is let me go back. On phase 2, how many units are projected for phase 2 when that takes place?
It's unknown at this time.
No. But the owner has a right to take phase 2, is what I understand?
Well, he has he has the rights for the 25 acres of commercial
Right.
and the 107 residential units and the ability to convert up to that 100 and whatever the number 36 or 37 that I'd stated. So he would then be, in order to move forward, let's say he develops all of phase 1, he would be, and he has the 107 residential dwelling units and 25 acres of commercial. He'd have to go out and to acquire additional development rights.
Here's where I'm going with all of this, if it makes sense or not. In the original Jones Tract development, page 19, section F talks about affordable housing. It says, and the owner and the town recognize the increasing need for affordable housing in the Bluffton area. Owner will encourage and use best efforts to promote affordable housing within a portion of the Jones Tract, and in consideration thereof, the town will define affordable housing and develop reasonable incentives to encourage the development of affordable housing with Bluffton. And we're in a conundrum where growth is impacting the quality of life of the residents of Bluffton, but we can't accomplish workforce affordable housing without some density levels. So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is this project appears to me to be the perfect example of a location that we should be having this discussion, period. We could help each other. We're helping each other with the retention pond system. We can certainly help each other having this discussion.
That bang the gavel right there?
Yeah.
Meeting over.
Question, I have a question too. With our 7 acres that we acquired, were there any development rights attached to that? So there were 0, same as the barn property?
Correct. Okay, just to give you guys some perspectives, this was in your packet just to see a 3D rendering of the site from New Riverside Road. This would be from the roundabout. As you can see, it's entering into the site with the focal point on the Civic Building back here. This would be from the landings at New Riverside, looking into the site, and then again from New Riverside Road. The review criteria were listed in your staff report. I'm happy to go over any one of them if you wish, but they are listed there. Again, we referred to the Planning Commission and the conditions that they had. I've highlighted this in green to show that all of these conditions had been met since the Planning Commission recommendation. The applicant were able to resubmit plans to meet all of these conditions. And then your actions this evening, you can approve the application as submitted. You can approve the application with conditions or deny the application as submitted. Again, from the process, just to bring this back to you, we're here tonight for the consideration, if it so moves forward, that we would at a later date bring back an ordinance for the reconfiguration of the town parcel into this New Riverside Village. And then I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
So am I understanding the process of the resolution, if we vote tonight to pass the resolution? That's, I'm trying to separate the two properties, you know, where what's town-owned will have a first and second reading on. This is just an amendment to the master plan. So
Initial.
tonight,
Yeah. This is an initial master plan, so this is the first time,
oh,
yeah, so,
initial master plan.
Correct.
So this is it, though? I mean, this is where the,
yeah, this is,
tonight,
Yep.
tonight, there's no first and second reading or changes or any of that?
master plans are just the consideration in front of you once.
Mr. Chair, if I could just clarify, tonight, yes, by majority vote, you would typically adopt or deny or, take action on a master plan. The first and second reading you might be talking about is the land swap. So if we have some decisions to make on swapping land, moving land, that's by ordinance. So in the future, you'd see it again by ordinance. However, tonight would be the master plan approval level, which ultimately sets the table for the land exchange, for the land movement.
So basically, tonight is saying,
Correct.
yes, we want to do everything. I mean, realistically, is that what I'm?
In other words, it would
I
not
mean, there's
come
no
back
coming
before this
back. Whatever
body.
we say tonight.
It would not come
Will
back
not come back.
before this body.
So let me look to my far right. Bridget, is there any questions or concerns you may have?
I did have one more question for the owner or the developer. So in regards to the housing units, has consideration been given to the AMI threshold you're looking at in terms of affordable housing?
We've had extensive conversations with our hope, and I can't make you any guarantees. Affordable housing, we've met with Palmetto Bluff to see what their needs are. We understand the needs of the community is paramount here. We're going to do our best efforts. We've done it in other communities around the country. Important in every city right now. We understand how important it is. There's a parity between getting projects financed and meeting the cost of that. We're going to give all of it our best efforts. We would like nothing better than that to happen. But I've heard what the town wants. I've heard from all of you what you want. And we've had these discussions now for several months. It has been the first discussion, and it will not be the last discussion. That's all I can tell you. We will give it our best efforts. And our reputation is we usually do what we say. I would love nothing better than that. The problems we're having where we live now, there's no housing. There's no housing really for policemen, school teachers, workers. There's just not. We've looked at other sites to make this work. We've looked at getting additional RDUs for this site to see if we can make that work. It has not gone on deaf ears because we've listened to it repeatedly. We've met, I've talked with the mayor and the town council. I know how important it is. We will give it our best efforts.
Thank you. And I ask, and as you're giving it your best effort, to look at the concept of affordability within that range of like that 60 to 80%, because our county is considered to be the one that has the highest average median income. So affordability to some is completely different, from others. So I think if we go in, or if you're going in at the juncture of the 100%, AMI, it's still not going to meet or address the needs that we're looking at. So I would definitely
We've looked at
suggest.
what we need here. We've
Right.
provided that information, and that's part of our thought processes. It's not a second thought. It was our first thought.
Awesome.
Other questions?
Good, I think.
Remarkable project if allowed. I think it'll save folks that come behind it, because we've all got to make this a joint project, because the town is only so big and you only have so much space, and every one of these have got to be right. And I appreciate your consideration.
Yeah, I just want to commend you again. I know that you have put a lot of thought into this. It's obvious. And again, I expressed our concern early on because this is the public that we deal with every day, and we're getting into a new part of Bluffton's personality that requires we ask these questions. However, we still have some unanswered questions, and one would be the trees at to see if we can save additional trees, or maybe even look at the results of those that should be exempt. Another part would be, from what I hear about the stormwater runoff situation, it sounds like you've really did a fantastic job with that. The only question I would ask is, I don't know if it matches with the new stormwater regs in the county that's been coming out. That's a regional approach. I don't know if it lines up with that or not. The only other thing is on we touched on the pervious sidewalks and things like that, but on the affordable housing question, I would like to see some more dialogue between you and the town manager to give us a little more to go on than good intentions. And I know good intentions are truly good intentions, but anything can change in time. And so how do we know, if we vote in favor tonight, where we are on that topic?
Honestly, you don't know.
Right.
You know, and all of this is going to be a mixture of me. If I could sit here and say, well, we're going to do affordable housing, and then 2 months down the road, I get to where it's not financeable, it's not possible to do it, costs are going to continue to go up, and it doesn't work, then I've misled you, and I'm not going to do that. I'm just telling you that we have talked about this consistently for 8 months. I've been provided all the data, and we've also talked about the adjoining piece, trying to figure out something there for affordable housing. I know how important it is, and it's something that we considered. On the tree basis, I would like to mention the number of trees we're talking about is every tree out there, healthy, non-healthy, ones in poor condition, not in good. We gave you the significant trees, and plus we're going to add back significant amount of trees. The number of trees you're hearing, a lot of those trees are fallable trees, what I call. A lot of them are diseased and unhealthy. We just gave you the tree count of everything there, not the significant trees, the ones you normally count in your ordinance.
Yeah, I will say too, and you may have already done this, on the housing situation, when you go back and look at the development plan, a contract that talks about the housing in the Jones Tract development plan, it talks about incentives from the town. I don't know if you've incorporated that into your discussion with the town manager or not, but if you have not, I encourage you to do so.
We've had preliminary discussions about that, of what the town's abilities are. Mark, you may want to contribute to that.
There's a lot. We've talked about all different types of incentives, whether it's, fee-based, other types of incentives. We've had extensive conversations. Just Jim's trying to make the numbers work, and I understand where he's at, but I also understand where you're at with the housing considerations at 60 to 80, 80 to 100. Where does that fall in, and can he make those numbers work? Is the question and answer I haven't been able to and nor determined before coming here to you tonight.
Even get to those discussions until we have a site that we can even go to a lender and say, this is what we're talking about doing. But most of the conversations we have been focused around that. And again, I could comment that yes, but I'm not going to mislead. I'm going to tell you the facts. We are giving it all we can. And I think the town manager, the mayor, and others will say, we have been working this thing pretty hard, wouldn't you say? Yes, sir. So it is our goal.
Thank you.
You'll recall that the owner just mentioned the adjoining property. We briefly discussed that in executive session last month.
My name's excuse me. My name's Dallas Wood. For those who don't know me, I represent Palmetto Bluff and New Riverside. I've been out at Palmetto Bluff for 15 years, and I was going to stand up and speak, and I was thinking I don't need to speak, but now since I was standing up for the last 5 minutes, here I am. First off, I want to thank the staff. I've had the privilege of working with them for the last 15 years, and y'all have a phenomenal staff. Hope you know that, and hope you appreciate them. The amount of hard work that they do is just I just am in awe every time I meet with them. What I want to just reiterate tonight is the investment that we all did about 15 to 20 years ago to make Palmetto Bluff and New Riverside. Mike Hughes made the term earlier. We spent $14 million within infrastructure for the New Riverside traffic circle and the New Riverside Road. Substantial investment. And that was to take the New Riverside concept plan and max it out. Since I'm on behalf of the New Riverside residents and Palmetto Bluff Dan, we will gladly do a traffic study if it puts you at ease. We owe that to our residents. I'm not a traffic engineer, but like Mike said, I'm sure we're going to be fine. For the 7-acre park, we donated that to the town with consideration that the town would work with us to develop it, to make it an amenity for the general public of the Bluffton residents, or else we would have never have donated that to the town. We also sold the town the barn site and the proposed, I can't get my numbers right tonight, but it was like 37 acres. And what I've seen in the last year is exactly what, we intended that 7-acre park to be. It was a public-private partnership. It's going to be an awesome facility for the residents. It's going to be a nice amenity, a pond. Kids can go there. You can fish in it. The water quality design is overkill. And again, I'm not an engineer. Thompson Hutton is phenomenal in what they do. I just wanted to just say tonight that I think this is one of the best developments that I've seen in a long time outside of Palmetto Bluff. They've taken the concepts that we have done and applied them and actually made them better. We pulled out an old plan that was 15 years old, believe it or not, that showed the New Riverside Village that was about 3 times its size that y'all are seeing tonight. And that was exactly why we made the investment of the $14 million in the New Riverside concept plan to have the gateway of Bluffton. And I think we're there. I just want y'all to look at that and consider it, because we did the investment to have, gosh, it was 500,000 acres of commercial square feet. We had 430 acres of commercial acreage that we could have developed. We reduced that down to about 190. Bree always corrects me in my terminologies on the acres. She's the keeper of all the lore here. But I guess what I'm trying to get to is this is something that is going to be good for the community. Palmetto Bluff is in major support of it. I agree with you, Fred, the multifamily, the affordable workforce housing is something that you and I have talked about a long time. I think that on the adjacent part of this project, that's definitely a viable option if we could all work together. And we're just here to support it and do whatever we can to see the project come to light. And I'm here for any other questions you may have.
Council members, I almost said mayor and council, but I'm used to that. Council members, so I've been taking some notes, and I just want to make sure that I kind of feel like we're definitely at the end of Kevin's presentation. We heard from the applicant. You have some questions, and so I think it's my job in helping Kevin while he's trying to be quick up there on his feet, trying to field what some of your questions are to make sure that we're at least answering them or conditioning the project with some of your questions for the future. So tonight, you have some options, and Kevin went over those with you. You could table this project, and we could bring you back the information. You could adopt it as is, you could deny it, or you could approve it with conditions. And so the questions that you've asked tonight, I've simply, and I'm not trying to put words in anyone's, I'm not trying to answer for you, but I think there are some obvious questions that collectively you've asked that I'm not sure if they're answered. I think you've brought up some good points. And so I think one of the questions is, are you collectively comfortable, and you don't have to answer me right now, but we potentially could condition this. Are you comfortable that we update a traffic study so that we have a traffic assessment, a traffic study, call it what you will, that incorporates the school, natural growth, all of the development. It considers the Beaufort County Park and considers all of those current traffic models, current traffic studies. It's not so much a projection at this point based, from a ground floor of 2004, whatever that number was. So do you want to update the traffic study, traffic assessment? Do you want to keep more trees? Do you want to plant more trees? Do you want to increase the town park open space, the land, as Councilman Toomer asked? Do you want to make that number larger than 2.5 acres? Down from 7.1, 2.5 open space, 3 lagoon, and about 4 acres on the trail. Do you want to increase that town park open space, the land size? Or do you want to reduce the lagoon area on our town property, thereby adding some lagoon area to the landowner's property? And then the housing considerations, do you also want that in the notes, in the conditions, or in the consideration, depending on your choice of action tonight? So kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things: traffic study, tree-related, town park, land, open space related, lagoon size related, and housing considerations related. I think that I've captured your questions with those questions for your consideration.
Job of summarizing our thoughts.
Welcome.
Role of the council.
I think we can table this tonight, and all the things that the town manager just outlined, the questions that's on our minds, gives us an opportunity to hear back.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not crazy about tabling and taking time, as I am just trying to get some kind of a commitment, you know. If I could just hear somebody say, yes, we're going to build 10 affordable units, or 5, or maybe even 1. You know, I wish that we could get a commitment for a starting point. That's our biggest concern. I don't know that, I mean, the project to me is awesome. It's a great idea. I have an issue with it. Come back and I'm just not sure what we're going to be told. Back, we've pretty much been told everything. You know, I mean, I'm not saying I like everything I'm told, but I think all my questions were answered.
Well, y'all have a different hat than I do, and I'm trying really desperately, because I've been on council before, and I'm trying to put my hat on differently. I hear what y'all are saying. If we could possibly not delay it, it helps us to move forward to find out if this is a viable project. We feel like it is. We've talked to lenders. We've done these projects all over the Southeast. My company has done, this is my project. I'm doing this because I live here. So whatever considerations you could give me, I will commit to the 10. I'll try to get it to 50. I'll try whatever I can do.
You'll commit to 10 tonight?
Yeah, I'll commit to 10. That'll be almost if I have to do it out of my pocket, because I want it for here. I really want to see more than that. We've talked about more than that. We've talked about other places to build this. So it is important to us. The trees, like I said, the number of trees that are coming down is every twig and branch out there we gave you. We didn't go through the significant trees. We didn't eliminate that. We just said every tree. Some of them are, as you know, in pretty bad shape. But we just gave you everything, because I put everything on the table with y'all, because y'all can figure it out. Y'all do this every week with somebody. So.
Commit to a traffic study tonight.
Yes, sir. Because the reason I say that is we're reducing density by 75% from what this traffic study was built on. So I have no fears of a traffic study. We're going from 500,000 square feet to a little over 100,000. No matter what's happened up and down the road, it's not going to affect that traffic study. I think we'll be fine on that.
We'll need to put those, yes, and the conditions into the motion, those two.
I personally am still for tabling it, only because what Mark had put forth in terms of the questions that we still had. I would rather see us do that opposed to just fast track it tonight to lock something in. I think it'd be important for the items that we've identified that many still have questions or issues around, to actually have those answered.
I understand, but I think tonight, or this opportunity is a good time to say what the other things that you want. Let's make sure that we can't. I think you were asking for EMI number, right? Say he'll build 10, build them at 100% AMI, that doesn't satisfy you, right?
And the other thing on trees, in all of our projects, we don't do the minimum caliber, we do much larger caliber, because it's to our benefit for it to be a mature project, rather than trying to pump life into a 2-inch caliber tree that may never grow. We go significantly more than that, because we found out long-term it pays dividends for us. Never do the minimums on that, and we talked about that.
But on the AMI of the 60 to 80%, is that something that you'd be able to make a commitment on of the 10 that you'd be building?
Please define that for me, because I have so many of the different.
Area median income?
Yeah.
Area median income,
Yes.
the Beaufort County, area median income is what we go by. They already, what we believe, most people start with 100 to 120, but we don't need those because they're already building them. So
Right.
60 to 80 is what we don't have.
Really want that as bad as you do. I'd like when you would come in here one day and say, we figure this out to do 40. You know, that's what I'd love to do, and then
Right.
really be smiling at me. I'm not an out-of-town guy coming in here saying, aren't I the smartest guy in the room? I'm a local guy who came in to the town and to the planning commission, said, how do we make this what y'all want? And that's what the whole purpose of this was. Smallest project, smallest I've ever done, but it's one that my wife and I are really serious about. Thank you. I'll leave all of that.
And to Councilwoman Frazier's point in terms of, or in the discussion on tabling versus approving or at least making some decisions tonight, regardless of your decision, if we are coming back next month, we would need some answer. Well, I would need some answers so I could direct staff and work with Heather and her team to give some direction to the applicant. So that the questions that were asked, as traffic study, I believe it was answered. Housing considerations, answered, or at least proposed. Do you want to keep some more trees? Do you want to keep a certain number above or a certain percentage more? Do you want to increase the town land open space more? Do you want to go from 2.5 to 3? Do you want to go from 2.5 to 3.5? And or do you want the landowner to capture some of that stormwater on their site, which in essence would increase our land? I think those are the last few questions. So regardless, my perspective, just because I know what's on staff's plate and where they are, you can make some decisions tonight to condition the project. We can assure that these things are accomplished and report back to you that they are with an amended master plan. Submit that to you just via email, but also make sure that all of that stuff, all of the bits of information are updated prior to your preliminary development plan and highway corridor overlay district submittals, which they still have a lot of work to do. The one thing I know is that, and by no means am I trying to hurry you, I've been through this with you. I think Dallas might brag that he's been at Palmetto Bluff longer than I've been here, but I'm not trying to hurry you. I do know that the library is very interested in this site and wants to get going. And so I just want to make sure. If you want more trees, say it. If you want more open space, say it. I think you said you want a traffic study, check the box. You want some housing considerations, check the boxes. Are there some other things that are very important to all of you, to the four of you?
Like I said earlier, I think you captured most of our concerns and summary. And what you said then, I'm in favor of moving forward if we can get those conditions. But I want it to be unanimous, if we can, that we make. Well, I want to make sure that Dan has some question about trees. I want to make sure he's happy about the trees. Bridget had her question answered about the housing, but I think you had one other concern.
Along with Dan, I had a question with the trees too.
You were good, right? Made that.
He committed.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's part of the conditions on a motion as far as
So,
I'm concerned.
the conditions that you outlined, Mark, let me ask this of the group. The tree issue, staff could come back or make their recommendation to what they, after, because they're going to review it anyway. We're not going to know, to say what trees additionally they can. That could be from staff level. The other part of it would be the acreage that we just spoke about, that maybe that we increase our park, land park, a little bit further, maybe 3 acres instead of the 2.5, whatever it was. What was the other one? That could be done at the staff level.
Lagoon,
Lagoon.
which ultimately, they both work in concert with each other.
And the
Traffic study.
traffic
Well,
study.
that was already agreed to.
Yep.
How do we put this in a?
I got it mostly done.
While they're doing that, I think it's important for us to pat ourselves on the back for listening to our constituents. All of these things that we are changing or implementing today, when we get an opportunity, is what we're hearing from the community for the last few months. So, I applaud you guys for
Kevin, could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
The planning commission conditions have already been fulfilled with this initial master plan tonight.
Yes, sir, and they're on the screen there.
Okay, thank you. Would you like me to read it, Mayor Pro Tem, or just hand it to Dan?
add that, Dan.
On the housing,
Yes.
on the
Right.
put 5 will be 60% AMI and 5 will be 80%. Right. Take a stab at it.
Okay.
I move to approve the initial master plan with the following conditions. 1, a traffic study update. 2, staff and the applicant will work to save additional trees. 3, the owner commits to 10, well, are those 10 of the existing Phase 1, or was that Phase 2? Phase 1? 10 units of Phase 1 will be affordable housing. 5 of those will be at the 60% AMI and 5 of those will be at the 80% AMI. And the town open land space land area will increase by 0.5 acres from 2.5 to 3 acres.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Also, like, thank you for your consideration. I know you're taking from this.
Thank you, and I have no doubt that you're right. Thank you.
Okay. Give that back to me. We're going to move forward.
And we have our pretty mayor back.
So I've had the opportunity to watch y'all twice now from the audience, and I missed this seat. Anyway, moving on to formal agenda. Great job, Fred. Formal agenda item 2, consideration of an ordinance amending the Chapter 26 of the Town Code, Traffic and Motor Vehicles for the purpose of adding rules for the parking lots. This is second and final reading. Mr. McElwee?
Again, this is second reading of the ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the Town Code, Traffic and Motor Vehicles for the purpose of adding rules for public parking facilities. If you'll recall, last month, our current rules mainly pertain to parking on streets and public ways. This amendment would speak to rules regarding town-owned and operated public parking facilities, such as 184 Bluffton Road. Council did not have any comments following first reading, and we've made no changes to the proposed rules, so I'm happy to go through them, or I can just skip to the...
Well, I have a question because I wasn't here, but I was watching you on Facebook in January, and by the time I texted him, I thought nobody listened because nobody reads text up here. One thing that I didn't hear was the vehicles with the for sale signs. It was that added. I did not hear that last month. Put that in as some kind of prohibitive use.
I might have to defer to Mr. Finger for that, because I believe we discussed it with Richardson, and it fell under solicitation.
Sorry, I was talking to Clerk Cunningham there for a second, so I missed that discussion. So if you could run it by me again, please, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so I was just wanting to check from the month when we first looked at this. When I was listening to Brian with his presentation, I was listening to everybody's thoughts, but I do see vehicles on our areas that we're doing cell signs. I just see them so often in the summer, and I know we can't do it on state parking, but I didn't know if we could start it on our town-owned parking, that we can at least have that in the rules, that that's not allowed. Basically losing our parking lots to southern.
This is an ordinance, amendment to the ordinance.
Correct.
And I don't believe that would be a material change. It's along with the intent of everything that we've done. So I believe you could introduce that now at second reading and not have to go back to first.
So you're saying we can introduce?
Yes.
Thought for y'all to consider.
Prohibit
yes.
selling of vehicles.
Right.
Or advertise selling.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, great.
I don't know how you want to add that to the motion, but here's the recommended language, so I guess if you want to...
Well, we'll let Terry tell us how to add that in there.
You say that you would instruct staff to add appropriate language with the town attorney to prohibit the advertising of boats and cars and park property, and give us the authority to remove them.
Okay,
And I can help with that language.
great. So are there any other thoughts? This is second reading. Other than that, there were no changes? Is there a motion to adopt the proposed ordinance amending Chapter 26, Article 3 of the Town of Bluffton Code of Ordinances by adding Section 2696 to establish a consolidated codified source of rules for all Town of Bluffton owned and or operated public parking facilities, and to apply appropriate language of prohibiting boats and cars with for sale signs
And the ability to remove them.
and the ability to remove them?
Remove the cars and boats, not just the signs.
Remove the vehicles in question.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. We have a great consent agenda. I hope you all take the time to read through this. It's wonderful information from all of our departments. Is there something you'd like to remove for further discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? There's any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And we're down to public comment. We have two. We'll start with Skip Hoagland. 3 minutes. We're going to be very strict with our 3-minute rule. So please get your information you want out early in that time. So if I stop you, that's why. Name and address, sir.
Evening, Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor. Ms. Soka, please stay seated. Public comment should be first, not disrespected last. Several years back, you did an illegal membership drive using town employees during town time to help profit the illegally operated Hilton Head Bluffton Chamber that harmed your own respected official Bluffton Chamber. You schemed this with your friend Bill Miles, Orlando, and Finger. You also recently said you offered to do the same membership drive for the Greater Bluffton Chamber. When will you do this? It seems it's not true, and you committed perjury in your deposition. You owe the Greater Bluffton Chamber 511 new members or $190,000 in damages. Then we find out you and Orlando illegally used tax money, not your own money, to become the Hilton Head Bluffton Chamber members, not the Greater Bluffton Chamber. That is until I caught you and I forced you to join both. I received an email sent by the Greater Bluffton Chamber lawyer, Roberts Balks. I quote, "This is a tragic mistake. Hilton Head Chamber is not Bluffton's chamber, and the town employees asking taxpayers support one chamber over the other is not right. Public is in an uproar and should be. Ms. Solka, you clearly abused and illegally misused town resources and need to make this right. You need to publicly announce the Greater Bluffton Chamber as the official chamber. Ask the fraud Hilton Head Chamber to leave Bluffton, as having two competitive chambers in Bluffton causes confusion for local businesses. No other city in South Carolina, the entire United States, has two official chambers. Remove the Hilton Head Chamber as the ATAX-funded DMO that you hired and favored over your own Greater Bluffton Chamber. This was totally corrupt, harming your own official chamber once again. Anything less is unacceptable. Your actions are despicable. We don't need a corrupt, game-playing real estate agent mayor with a horse in the race. Ms. Solka, you were elected by apathy with only 3,200 votes out of a population of 20,000. We need a full-time professional mayor. You are a great cheerleader, but not qualified for serious town matters. To add, our overdevelopment, traffic, polluted rivers, you have been warned about years ago, another example of incompetence, or was it just selling more real estate? We're exceeding 5 pounds in a 5-pound bag. We don't need a town lawyer, Finger, who has development clients, and we don't need a town manager, Orlando, that illegally uses tax funds. The fox is watching the hen house. What we need is an FBI forensic audit of this entire town. It's gotten to the point where, like David Lauderdale says, we're in Crazyville. We got to clean it up.
All right, Madam Mayor, let the record, let the minutes please reflect that Mr. Hoagland has failed to abide by the rules of our public comment. Thank you.
Next, with pleasure, and I saved you for last because you're going to be the smile of my night, Kathy Kramer, and I know you're bringing some support. Sorry, a little late, but all worthy. Thank you, Kathy. Interesting. Yes.
How are you?
Good. Give us your name and address real quick, Kathy.
I'm Kathy Kramer, 8 Bear Island, Hilton Head. And I was a school teacher in Beaufort County for 33 years. And I've known you since I can't remember not.
Thank you. Can I video him? Okay. Hold on. Start. Go.
What is your name?
My name is William Dennington.
How old are you?
I'm 23 years old.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Bluffton High School.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a grocery clerk at Bulk Walter Publix.
Why are you marvelous?
Because I'm a Special Olympics Olympian.
Tell us what sports you are in.
I'm in tennis, bowling, basketball, and track and field.
And we're here today to announce
That on April 2nd, we are going to be hosting track and field at May River High School.
And if it rains,
It will be postponed to April 3rd.
woo! We figured that one out. That was a great one. Okay, William Dennington, you have something to present to the mayor of Bluffton.
We are going to award you the Special Olympics award as you are a part of Special Olympics. Welcome to the future.
Yeah, baby.
Thank you. Has he finished? Oh, come everybody. Come on.
Get in the picture.
I go and I'll hold you down. I see that picture too. Heck yeah. I expect all of y'all to be at Special Olympics. Right? And then you'll give a medal to everyone.
There you go. There'll be over 500 athletes from all over Beaufort and Jasper County.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you for staying with us. It was worth every minute, and I want to see you after the Olympics for round 2. Good, thank you very much. Okay. Public comment is over. Phew. But we'll have it again next month. Next, is there a motion to go into executive session for personnel matters regarding town council appointments of boards, committees, and commissions? That's FOIA Act 3470A1.
Move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
We are in executive session. Will there be action from executive session? There will be action, probably appointments on the boards and committees, Dan. And we are going in here. Y'all can stay unless y'all want to go home.
It's funny, I met with Mark today. I didn't tell him everything I had. The one thing I did ask him to look at with you, he's gonna get with you. Look at well, there's a thing, they put some state statute in there that talks about a minimum of 4 years and a maximum.
Mom's thinking about it.
It sounds like we broke the law.
Lots of things that were done.
Because that would work in our favor. And then the other part of it was, I'd have to find it, there was something wrong about it. And I didn't understand it.
Why am I hearing
Mention it
this?
tomorrow. I'll look at it when I
Okay,
get
is
home.
there a motion to move out of executive session?
So moved.
Is there a second? We're out of executive session. No votes were cast. No action was taken. We do have action, though, from executive session on our boards, committees, and commissions. Is there a motion to approve Nate Pringle for ATAX representing the cultural organization? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That's unanimous. Is there a motion to, for Courtney McNeil and Michael Lavecchio to serve on Historic Preservation Commission?
So move.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? I didn't put their vacant seats where they're sitting, but we can figure that out. Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That's unanimous. Anything else good for the peeps that are still here? I'm very proud of you, young lady, for staying past your bedtime. You can write a report on how crazy we are. Okay? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Done. Y'all blasted past the time I thought we'd be.